In 1987, Carmine Persico, the imprisoned boss of the Colombo crime family, ordered a murder which went against one of the core principles of Cosa Nostra. Persico wanted to whack a federal prosecutor. He entrusted this controversial task to a man who eventually, in his violent mob career, would survive multiple assassination attempts, trade gunfire with Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa, and order the murder of a serving NYPD officer. Let's check out the Colombo badass who was known on the street as Joe Waverly. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at Joe Waverly, Cacace. There seems a great deal of debate around the exact pronunciation of Cacace's surname. Prior to this video, I reached out to some of my Brooklyn-based viewers for assistance, and they all came back with some very plausible and yet very different versions of his name. I also reached out to former Colombo associate Larry Mazza, a man who actually knew Joe Waverly and had at least once tried to kill him. He told me that it was pronounced Cacace, as in suitcase. But I do want to thank all of those who came back to me. Your help is appreciated. In 1987, Carmine Persico was in the early stages of his epic 100-year sentence that he'd received in the famous commission case, alongside such mob heavyweights as Fat Tony Salerno, Jerry Langella, Anthony Corallo, Tom Mick Santoro, and the former convicted gang rapist and Lucchese consigliere, Christopher Christy Tick Fenari. For reasons that are still not 100% clear, Persico put a target on the back of Federal Prosecutor William Aronwald. Interestingly, Arawald hadn't even been involved in the commission case that put Persico away for a century. Arawald's only connection to the snake was that he had once prosecuted Persico's brother, Allie Boy. However, that case ended in an acquittal for the accused. Some sources indicate that for some reason, Persico believed that Arawald had either disrespected him or disrespected Cosa Nostra. Either way, it seems strange to break mob protocol and authorise a hit on a federal prosecutor for no clear and obvious reason. But that is exactly what Persico did. Persico gave the controversial contract to the then 46-year-old Colombo soldier, Joe Waverly. Joe Waverly had a fearsome reputation on the street. He had come up in the crew of the vicious Colombo captain, Charlie Moose Panarella, a mobster who allegedly made a man eat his own testicle before he killed him. On December the 21st, 1976, Waverly was leaving his florist shop in Brooklyn when he was accosted by three men who forced him into the back of their car. However, the three assailants had greatly underestimated their target. Waverly wrestled the gun off the man beside him and promptly shot him dead. The kidnapper in the passenger seat turned around and opened fire on Waverly, who exchanged shots back. Waverly was shot in the chest and hand, but managed to shoot and wound the driver. The gunfight and the injury to the driver caused the vehicle to crash, and the remaining kidnappers, probably realising that they'd bitten off more than they could chew, quickly fled the scene on foot. Joe Waverly, with bullet wounds to his chest and hand, jumped in the front seat of the vehicle. He drove to the 61st Police Precinct on Coney Island, with the dead kidnapper still on his back seat. Waverly was treated for his critical chest wound, but still said little to the police. Why he was targeted that day by the assailants remains unknown. Joe Waverly would go on to survive several other assassination attempts. Despite once being a Persico loyalist, in the first half of the Third Colombo War between Vic Orena and Carmine Persico, Joe Waverly sided with Little Vic. This put him in the crosshairs of Persico gunman Greg the Grim Reaper Scarpa. According to Peter Lance's book Deal with the Devil, Scarpa and Waverly had been feuding for 5 years prior to 1992. Waverly had apparently, correctly as it turns out, spread rumours that Scarpa was an informant. And in turn, Scarpa provided the FBI with further information on Joe Waverly. In January 1992, Scarpa, Larry Mazza and Jimmy Del Masto spotted Waverly in his car on East 3rd Street and Avenue U. The trio pulled up alongside him. Scarpa attempted to fire his Tech 9, but it jammed, and Waverly was able to pull his gun and fire back, shattering the window of his assailant's van. A month later, on the 26th of February 1992, Scarpa and his crew made another attempt on Joe Waverly near the Party Room Social Club. Joe Waverly was carrying his dry cleaning when Scarpa opened fire with a .22 caliber rifle. 14 shots were fired at Waverly and he was hit in the stomach and groin. He still, however, managed to pull his gun and return fire. There was an ambulance nearby which was able to treat Waverly fast and probably saved his life. The ambulance men found 2 empty holsters, but there was no sign of any guns. As Larry Mazza said recently, Waverly has had to carry a bag to help him go to the bathroom ever since this attack. Joe Waverly would recover, and down the line he would switch back to the Persico faction. Anyway, back to 1987, and Carmine Persico has ordered Joe Waverly to murder Federal Prosecutor William Aronwald. Interestingly, 1987 was the exact same year that Joe Waverly was involved in the murder of a corrupt ex-police officer, Carlo Antonino. Joe Waverly put together a 3-man hit team. It consisted of a Lucchese associate named Frank Smith and brothers Enrico and Vincent Carini. The 3 men stalked their target to Long Island City laundromat, and at around 2 p.m. Enrico Carini went inside and shot the victim twice in the head and 3 times in the chest. However, a massive error had been made, and the hit team had killed the wrong guy. They had murdered William Aronwald's father, George, a 78-year-old retired civil lawyer who was working as a hearing officer for the Bureau of Parking Violations. The negative media and publicity around the killing allegedly angered the bosses of the other families, and Joe Waverly moved quickly to distance himself from the murder. 3 months later, the Carini brothers were at Frank Smith's mother's house about to have dinner. Before Frank Smith's mother could serve up, the brothers' beepers went off, and they asked her if they could borrow her son's car. The next morning, the bodies of Enrico and Vincent Carini were found. Vincent shot to death in Frank's car, and Enrico in a second car parked down the same Brooklyn street. Shortly after, Frank Smith said he was visited by Colombo heavyweights Jimmy Angelino, Vic Orena and Joe Waverly. Smith, who would later turn informer, said, "They were trying to get a read on how I felt over my friends being killed. They asked me if I was looking for vengeance. I said no, there was no problem, and they left." At the wake for the Carini brothers, Frank Smith was visibly upset, and he was warned by Lucchese captain George Georginek Zappola that people were watching and that type of behaviour could get you killed. Joe Waverly had allegedly used a Lucchese family associate named Carmine Persico to kill the Carini brothers. In an interesting twist, sometime later, Joe Waverly would go on to marry Enrico Carini's widow. Frank Smith feared for his life, and due to his connections with George Zappola and the Lucchese family, 2 sit-downs were held where Anthony Casso and Vic Amuso were speaking with the Colombo family with regards to sparing Frank Smith's life. An alternative version was put forward by Colombo associate Kenny Kenji Gallo, where he suggests that it was Teddy Persico Jr. who helped intervene on Frank Smith's behalf. Carmine Persico, the alleged killer of the Carini brothers, was himself gunned down on September 3rd, 1987. He was walking with Bonanno associate Frank Santora when Frank Smith, along with his father Frank Sr. and Michael Celloni, caught up with him in front of Bath Avenue dry cleaning and tailoring shop. Frank Smith shot Persico to death, as well as Santora, who apparently stepped in to help his friend. However, Santora was never an intended target. He'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The order for this killing allegedly came from Anthony Gaspipe Casso himself. Lucchese associate Bert Kaplan would later testify that Casso had been having problems with Persico for a while. However, other sources indicate that this killing was Joe Waverly further insulating himself from the botched Arawald hit. Frank Smith was still very wary of Joe Waverly, and he told one person, "I never figured Joe Waverly would let me live, since I'm the only one left who could tie him to the killing." But in a weird and perhaps fortuitous piece of luck, Frank Smith was wrongly convicted of a cocaine deal and was sent away for 13 years. But this did keep him off the street and out of Joe Waverly's reach, perhaps saving his life. Frank Smith would later turn informer after he was charged for the Variali and Santora killings. Joe Waverly would be promoted to captain in the Colombo family in 1988 and would later serve as both consigliere and acting boss. He would also allegedly order the killing of NYPD officer Ralph Doles, but that is a story for another day. In 2004, the 63-year-old Joe Waverly went on trial for racketeering and murder. He entered a plea and received 20 years. In his plea, Waverly stated regarding the George Aronwald killing, "I passed along a message to someone. I knew that by passing the message, a person would be killed." With regards to the Carmine Variali killing, Waverly said, "I agreed with others to cause the death of Carmine Variali. I passed along a message that resulted in the death of Variali." William Aronwald, the original target of Persico's anger, died at the age of 79 in 2020. He outlived the Colombo crime boss by a year, as Persico had died in 2019. Aronwald always felt the guilt that it should have been him and not his father murdered, and he remained clueless as to why Carmine Persico had wanted him dead. Joe Waverly, however, is outliving them all. He served 16 years of his 20-year sentence and was released in 2020 at the age of 79. He was initially touted as a successor to the deceased Persico, but it is currently unclear what his status is. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.